So astrology is considered to be a Vedic science. And what does that mean, a Vedic science? Well, Veda essentially means knowledge. But it's not the kind of knowledge that we think of, that we get from a book. It is self-revealed knowledge. It's knowledge that comes from direct experience. The practice of astrology, just like the practice of Ayurveda and the practice of yoga, the idea is that we learn to understand our role within this world. And a lot of people have ideals about how things should be, how the world should be. Vedic astrology doesn't have any say that everyone should be a certain way, because there are different aspects of the chart. There are houses that deal with dharma, so people that are engaged in inspirational pursuits. There are houses that deal with moksha, which are liberation, meditation, transcending this worldly experience. There are aspects that deal with kama, exploring desire and pleasure. Artha, which is developing resources. And we're all part of this infinite consciousness. Just like we have all these different cells within our body, and each cell does something specific. We don't want our blood cells to try to act like brain cells, nor do we want our brain cells to try to act like liver cells. When that happens, we get confusion, the body breaks down, although I don't think that ever actually really happens. But the same goes for humanity. We can see ourselves as individuals, just as though we see a blood cell thinking that it is its own individual thing and that it doesn't help anything else. It's just going through the blood, fulfilling its own self, its own needs. And when that happens, again, we have this breakdown. So if we realize that we're all part of consciousness, we all have a specific role reflected within our birth chart. And these roles don't get too, don't try to make them so black and white, basic, or myopic. It's not that one person has the role to be a lawyer, the other person has a role to be a doctor, someone else has a role to be a garbage man, someone has a role to be a musician. Now that's true. But if we think about it, there are so many things going on in life that the career and the path, that's just one aspect of the bigger picture. So you might have a role to act in a certain way towards someone, to help them fulfill a certain karma. They have a role to act in your life. And it all fits together in this quite amazing way, this mind-boggling way. I believe it is beyond the mind, our ability to conceive of totally and completely. But the point being is that if we can see the chart, and we can see within that birth chart what our role is, what are all the aspects of ourself that we are going to manifest within this lifetime, making peace with that, deciding if that's the way we want to go, that helps us come into more realization of what we are at the core of our being. So externally, sure, we are a human body. We have a profession. We have a relationship to certain people. We have hobbies and skills and interests. But that is what consciousness is interested in through us. So we are a single point in which consciousness is experiencing something particular. And of all the 7 or 8 billion people, or however many people there are on the planet now, even the rocks and the plants and the animals, that is a certain point of consciousness that wants to experience something particular. The birth chart reflects this. Now, one of the fascinating aspects of the birth chart is that we can see what is the direction as an individual that will support our inspiration. For example, each of the signs, each of the ascendants has certain planets that work well for it and that don't. For example, Jupiter is considered to be one of the best benefics. It gives grace, good fortune. But for a Virgo ascendant, for a Gemini ascendant, Jupiter isn't really considered that great of a planet. He actually gets in the way of a person's dharma and purpose. But say for a Cancer or a Leo ascendant, or even an Aries ascendant, Jupiter can be very helpful. So if we can even just get a sense of our basic ascendant energy, we can see what are the actions, the activities, or the ways of being within our life that will be supportive of fulfilling this greater Dharma? And again, it's not that greater Dharma of ideals, of shoulds and shouldn'ts, as we think about it in regards to morals. It's more of that greater Dharma in regards to our role within this world as a divine expression, as an expression of the infinite consciousness. We don't need to use the term divine, because essentially everything falls into that category, even though some people would argue that. Now, with Vedic astrology, there are two other planets, which we will get into, called Rahu and Ketu. And it is these two planets that show, as an embodied being, where we've been in past lifetimes and what we're aiming to develop in this lifetime. So it shows the path of this incarnated consciousness. It shows where we have skills and talents, such as K2, shows where we have been in past lifetimes, where those skills and talents will come out. But we won't have success, or success isn't the right word. We won't be able to get fulfillment through that placement of K2. And in that sense, we need to look to Rahu, which is that part of our consciousness which we have not completely and fully developed, and so it's shaky, it's unknown. It almost seems clouded to a degree because we haven't developed it. And by looking at these two planets, they're actually points in space, eclipse points, that gives us a sense of the major goals and the major obstacles that we need to work out psychologically, but also physically within this body and within this world. And by doing that, by focusing on those desires of Rahu, by perfecting them, by letting go of those attachments of Ketu, those obsessions of Ketu, we create a better environment to experience liberation. Liberation in the sense of we are doing our job, we are doing our work, we're doing our duty within this infinite consciousness, no matter what it is, whether it's involved in those four areas of life mentioned before, the moksha, artha, kama, and dharma. We can all be an aspect of this divine consciousness no matter what path we're following, as long as we can work with these planets. And so this is one of the primary roles of Vedic astrology as a Vedic science, because it gives us knowledge of ourself as an individualized being, our path and our purpose within this world. And remember, it's not judgmental, so the good or the bad doesn't matter. We have bad things occur, and we have good things occur. And it's always one side of the same coin. Just like if we don't have criminals, well, then we can't have policemen. If we don't have disease, then we can't have doctors. So all these things go together. And it might be that we do some things within life which people might consider to be despicable or hurtful. But that helps to burn out someone else's karma. We might do things that are good and nice and supportive for others. And that's because that is assisting the karma, the exhaustion of the karma of those people that are on the other side of that, receiving end of that. But it is important to remember that it's not a good idea to allow this idea of karma to make us unconscious or choose to do things which are hurtful. Things are going to happen that are hurtful. When we fall into a state of unconsciousness, we might act in ways that are less than we would like. But to say that it's okay if I act in this difficult way, in this problematic way, because obviously they deserve that karma, well, that is perpetuating the cycle of karma. And so as conscious, awake, fully aware beings, the more detachment we get from this personality, when that desire arises to be difficult or to cause a problem, we can say, wait, I don't want to continue this wheel of karma. So that's why you stop and you don't perpetuate the cycle. So we have to remember that it is a good thing to focus on behaviors which are supportive, kind, benevolent, because these can be sattvic things which promote light and harmony within the world. And the reason we do this isn't to change the world. because the world is here for a reason, because there are 7 to 8 billion people who need to experience both the sorrows and the joys within this particular life experience, this particular plane of consciousness. So we're not going to change that. But the more we choose benevolence, peace, clarity, silence of our consciousness, what that does is it lifts us up to a different plane where we don't need to be a part of this world anymore. We've grown beyond it. Just like eventually you grow beyond 3rd grade and you learn something new. So try not to think of karma as black and white. Try not to use the theory of karma to make excuses for your behaviors. But consider, where do you want to go and what kind of world do you want to be in? This is the testing ground for that. If you are in situations that cause you to be angry or hurtful, well, if you act out those things or make choices to cause problems, then you are affirming that you want to be in behaviors or situations that contribute to that. And then your karma persists. You die tomorrow, you come back, you still have Saturn and Mars on the ascendant, giving you these kinds of situations and opportunities. But let's say you have Saturn and Mars on the ascendant, and you're prone to being irritable and difficult and lashing out at people. Well, as soon as you get a conscious awareness of that as a habit and a pattern that you have, and you start to admit that, then when the chance comes around for you to do that again, you can take a breath and say, no, I'm not doing that this time. And the more you do that, the more distance you get from that negative karma. And in time, even though situations will still come around which will trigger you, in time you become so clear and so stable in that sense of peace and harmony that, let's say you do die tomorrow. Well, next time you incarnate, it might not be in this world or in this plane, but it will be in a plane or a world where there is more harmony. Now, we don't want to live in such a way that we're looking to the future, but we do need to be aware of that our inner states of consciousness will be reflected in our external experience. And just as mentioned before, there will be a lag time in which the karma needs to exhaust itself. So you still may experience difficult things, but as long as you hold within your consciousness that clarity, that peace, that unshakable power of presence, eventually that karma negates itself. And the next time you come around, if you come around, the situations will be different. You won't be perpetuating the negative circumstances. And this all comes in time. It comes through dedication. You make mistakes, you trip, you fall down, and you get back up and you reaffirm, you reestablish yourself in that state that you want to experience. And by doing that, Vedic astrology starts to work as a Vedic science, which is liberating you from these karmas, liberating you from the wheel of birth and death, giving you a sense of knowing of what you are as this wholeness of life, and allowing you to make conscious choices rather than being pushed around by all the unconsciousness of your past karmas indicated by the planets. And eventually you recognize the planets not as forces that are seizers that grab you and make you do things, but as an aspect of yourself. And we need all of the planets. We need Saturn, we need Mars, we need Venus, we need Jupiter, Mercury, Sun, Moon, Rahu, Ketu. We need them all because they're all a part of us. But we need them to work in harmony. We need them to work with understanding. And when that happens, we're integrated. We transcend this realm, and we learn new things in the next realm, which are beyond our comprehension at present. But that's okay, because what we're here to work on is what's going on now, not necessarily worrying about what happens next, because that'll be just fine, whatever it is. So this is how astrology can work as a Vedic science. And this is how it can help us with our path towards self-knowledge and self-realization.